Hello and welcome to this session of the medical debate where we're going to be talking about epigenetics. First of all, I would like to give everyone 2 minutes, 2 to 3 minutes to just write down everything they know about the structure of DNA. This would be really helpful because we're going to be talking about epigenetics, and epigenetics revolves around the DNA and the working of the DNA. So if you know about the DNA, it'll be a lot more helpful. If you do not want to write it down, if you want to just carry on with the presentation, please feel free to skip forward in time 2 minutes in this video, and then you can carry on to listening. But the 2 minutes of writing down what everyone knows about the structure of DNA starts now. Okay, so the 2 minutes is over, and now we're going to look at the different structures of DNA, or the main things you should know about DNA. So one of the main things is that it has a sugar phosphate backbone that complementary bases pair to each other. The nucleotides base pair to each other, and they're complementary. So adenine to thymine and cytosine to guanine. There are hydrogen bonds between the bases that are present. It's in the shape of a double helix, and there are histones present and nucleotides. And it's quite important that you know about the different part of DNA and how it functions. Okay, so what are epigenetics? So epigenetics is basically sort of trying to understand why someone's personality comes around the way it does. And it's sort of also taking in nature versus nurture, but there is a genetic component. So in biology, epigenetics is a study of heritable phenotype changes that do not involve alterations in the DNA sequence. That is a quote taken directly from Wikipedia. An epigenome they are made up of little markers which sit on DNA to compact or decondense some genes. This is different to nature or nurture because this talks about the genetic component of your personality. And epigenetics talks about either suppressing or enhancing genes by tightening or loosening DNA around histones. So for example, let's say you have a pencil, right? Try this at home. You take a pencil and you coil some string around it. Use some tape to tape some part of the string down to the pencil so it can't move. And use your fingers to uncoil the string in some places. In this case, what do you think acts as histones? What acts as the DNA? And what acts as the epigenetic markers? So in this experiment, what the answer to that question is that the pencil acts as the histones. The DNA is by the string represents the DNA, and then epigenetic markers condense the DNA, and this is modeled by the tape by pushing it down. So prenatal behavior such as smoking, eating bad foods, and generally unhealthy behavior cause different types of epigenetic markers to accumulate in the genome. Should mothers not be allowed to smoke or have choice in what they eat? Should mothers be allowed to smoke or choice in what they eat, but with some guidance? Or should mothers be allowed to eat and drink as they see fit when they are pregnant with their baby? I would like you guys to take 3 minutes to think about this, and we will reconvene in 3 minutes. If you wish to skip ahead, you can skip ahead by 3 minutes, and we'll carry on with the presentation. 3 minutes start now. Okay, so that was roughly 3 minutes, and now we're going to talk about some of the answers. So, some common points that could be raised here is about autonomy. Mothers or pregnant mothers should be allowed to have, arguably should be allowed to have choice in what they eat, since they're putting their body, on the line when they're pregnant and they're having a child, and so they should be able to do as they feel because it is their body. And on the other side, you could consider the autonomy of the baby. The baby does not have a say, so the baby might not want for the mother to smoke, but it doesn't have a choice. But there's lots and lots of different ways to think about this. You could also think about beneficence, the fact that smoking could cause harm to the baby, but then you could also think about non-maleficence, that it might be emotionally difficult, or it might be just difficult in general if mothers aren't allowed to do as they please when pregnant. You think about justice, perhaps when you're looking after the baby, the mother isn't being treated as fair and she's not able to do whatever she says or she wants to do, or perhaps the other way around, that if the mother is looked after more, or maybe if the mother has more autonomy, then she would be able to then maybe the baby's being mistreated or not treated as fair. But there's lots and lots of viewpoints to take, and that's the key thing in ethics, is that there's lots and lots of, there's no right and wrong answer. There's lots of viewpoints to think about. And actually in this case, we can actually think about the fact that some principles of ethics can go against each other, and they can actually, for example, autonomy and justice. Whoever gets autonomy might be giving injustice to the baby. For example, if the mother gets more autonomy, then the baby might be treated less fairly. Again, that's a very precarious argument, and there are lots of factors to consider, but it's very important that you look at all different types of ethical scenarios and ethical viewpoints in this scenario. So we're going to look at transgenerational effects. A study showed that some people who smoked and drank when they were young led to their children having shorter lifespans and then even shorter in their grandchildren. Similarly, in mice, a study showed that when some pups were ignored, the glucocorticoid receptor gene was silenced by epigenetic markers, leading to these rats being more stressed out and even more stressed out in the pups' children. What can you tell about the effect of behavior on epigenetics and therefore the impact of these epigenetics on future children? Should the upbringing of children be controlled between siblings? So, one thing you should be able to tell is that epigenetics can have a transgenerational effect. Things can be passed down and develop through generations. As we can see in the mice study, they were becoming more stressed out as the generation went along. Not only this, but then the idea of the upbringing of children being controlled between siblings. Now, that idea arises from the fact that if personality has such a huge genetic component, then possibly would you want two siblings who have very similar DNA to be having the exact same healthy upbringing, so that there's no difference and that there's no injustice between the two? Because it's clear here, at least, that epigenetics has a big part. But obviously, two twins, even though they may look the same and they may have very similar DNA, they would have highly different upbringings, or quite different upbringings. They would experience different things at different times. So what ethical viewpoints could you think about that? I'm going to give you 1 minute and then we'll reconvene in 1 minute. And the 1 minute starts now. Okay, so that's 1 minute up. Let's think about the ethical viewpoints about controlling the upbringing of children between siblings. If you have two different siblings, then it's quite possible, then if they're not twins, they have very different genetics. If they're twins, then they might have very similar genetics, but not identical. So it's quite important to realize that bringing up children, controlling them, although it could lead to them being healthy because everyone's getting the same amount of nutrition and same amount of attention, it's also not good to not let them develop their own personalities. And again, this is sort of the ethical viewpoint, that they may not want their upbringings to be controlled. They may want to explore different things, and that's going against their autonomy if we're controlling this upbringing. Similarly, you want to be doing everything with the best intent, which is beneficence, and not letting them explore the world in their own way. That would be going against beneficence. And however, obviously, you have to realize that the justice pillar, if you're treating siblings the exact same and legally, then the justice pillar is obeyed. So it's yet again another example of where two principles of ethics could actually be contradicting one another. Okay, so this is a BMAT practice essay, that question that you could come up with. And we've just made this question up, but we think it might be good to think along these lines. This is the question, and if you wish to, please pause the video and try out the question for yourself. If we could artificially control epigenetics, we could create a more sustainable and productive population. Discuss this statement. In your answer, include ethics of controlling genes, points for or against, and evidence for and against this. You could use the stuff that we've said previously in this video. Feel free to use the same case studies and same information as well as new ones. If you wish to, you can pause the video here and listen to try the question. Normally, I would say spend no more than sort of 20 minutes maybe to do the question, and come back and try this, and we'll then go through some answers. If you wish to go ahead and just look at the answers rather than going through the process of actually doing the question, then we'll carry now. So if you want to try the question now, please pause the video here. Okay, so we're gonna go through some answers. So these are some potential answers you could have put down. So you could talk about ethics. What about autonomy? If you're artificially controlling epigenetics, people might not want that. What if epigenetics are abused? You know, if you want a certain certain people to be better at something for different purposes or for personal gain, and how would candidates be chosen? It's very important to consider justice. Who would be chosen in this? Would it be a certain country's population? Would it be the entire population of the world? And if it was the entire population of the world, then who's controlling this epigenetic movement? Because then they would not be controlled. Points for and against could include the idea that if all people were controlled, we can enhance certain traits and bring up potential. However, people may not agree with what they are being exploited for being best at. You know, if the epigenetics are geared towards being good at something, then they might not enjoy that, but they might be good at it, and so they're being exploited for it. That's against autonomy. And for the evidence, like I said, please feel free to use the case studies we mentioned in the previous, in this same video earlier on. Okay, so thank you very much for listening to our presentation today, where we talked about epigenetics. If you wish to contact us, you can go onto our Instagram at themedicaldebate, where we post information about the live events we do, as well as other news from the medical debate. We also run Zoom webinars every single Saturday from 4 p.m. to 5 p.m., where we talk about different medical aspects, and we record those, and those end up here. And you can access those Zoom webinars by emailing us at on themedicaldebate@gmail.com, where we will send you a link. Thank you very much for attending this session, and we'll see you in the next one.